Hi everyone, I hope you are all well. I have a card sticking out. This was my card of the day. I apologize. We got the Two of Cups. So, we are back. I am back with a spread or reading tutorial of one of the spreads that I've designed. If you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen this a few days ago when I posted it. It's called the Descent into Matter spread. So this was really inspired by the 10 of coins or 10 of discs and the idea of, in say the Kabbalah or the Golden Dawn and Thoth Tarot, a descent into matter from the top, which is top of the tree of life, which embodies, I guess, or exemplifies divinity, with the most bottom sphere on the tree of life representing earth being the most dense and removed from the divinity, the most almost imperfect, but also divine in the sense that there's a cyclical aspect, and being at the bottom means that you are the closest to being almost regenerated or recycled back up to that top sphere. Hope that makes sense. But so I made this spread. You can see some of my notes from my actual doing of that reading here. I don't think that they're all that overly personal, and I'm okay with them being seen. But so this is the actual spread. So feel free to pause and screenshot there if you want to do this on your own, but I'm going to take us through it and just show you guys how I have conducted it and would conduct it, so that if you want to do this at home or this is of interest for you, you can do this. I think it's fun. I love watching tarot exercises to be done online, and so providing them is fun because I'm doing them, making them for myself, and it's fun for me to share these sorts of things. And so without further ado, I guess we'll get right into it. I'll start by saying that I did make this in an upside down triangle in a way. I didn't quite make the line through it as the earth glyph might look like, just because I didn't know how I would do that with the cards exactly. It wouldn't turn out as well. I guess I could do like a sideways card like there and there, but so it is really meant to be earthy. It's meant to be that downward arrow. We're descending. There's that earth glyph reference, so take that how you will. I do tend to make spreads in shapes of various things that correspond to what the reading is about. I would say that this reading is really about lessons to be learned, how they manifest and how we go about learning them, and then reaching that really dense lower point where we're about to be recycled back up to the top and start a new lesson. So this final card, we'll get into that, but I guess that's the general gist of what this reading's all about. And so now we will go through a sample of what that would, sample tutorial type thing of what that would look like. So as usual, this isn't a real reading, quote unquote. It's just me showing you guys how to go about this. So I'm not going to go too much into the actual details of any given card. I might use a few words to give you an idea, more so for the idea of how the spread position would work, but less so about what the actual cards are communicating, because this is just a tutorial and sample reading. Okay. And we're using the Thoth deck. You can use any deck you want. You can use an Oracle deck. You can use runes, Oghams, the I Ching. It doesn't matter. I'm using the Thoth because that's how I originally designed it, and because it is very Kabbalistic, Golden Dawn-esque inspired. So I think that this is universal, but that's what inspired it. So that's why I'm using this deck, if you're at all curious about that. If not, now you know, regardless. So first, these aren't read in, say, each card pertaining to a very specific point. They're more read in lines. And so the top line across for us is worldly lessons to be learned at this time. So this is very much a spread that can be done many times. So the spread that I do, say, yes, if I did the spread yesterday and then came back to it in 2 months, I think I might have very different results. So this is one that you could come back to and continuously do and almost use as a way of keeping track of the lessons you're learning and the path that you're on and where you're at and how all that's going. So this is a spread that you could revisit periodically. But at the top, that top line, we have worldly lessons to be learned at this time. All right. So this could be read in a line form as 3 separate things. You could read them as just one single solitary lesson, as a larger lesson that has many facets. And so I guess we'll just try to break it down like that. So we have the Seven of Swords, the Ten of Cups, and the Six of Wands. And right off the bat, I think that we're getting sort of this feeling of personal power, of fulfillment to be had, of realizing, I guess, your own greatness, your own light. I I would say that this line is really about overcoming insecurity, of self-doubt, of being too hard on oneself or feeling not so good, not good enough. So I would actually tend for myself, and in a reading say that I have done for myself, I tended to try to combine these cards into a single lesson. What's sort of that running theme when I combine all of these concepts and meanings of these cards into one sort of thing? What specifically does that feel like? What's the feeling it's encapsulating? What kind of energy am I getting from it? So you might want to think about it like that, but there's no wrong or right way to do this. You can choose to think of it as 3 lessons. You can choose to think of it as 2 with a caveat. You can choose to think of it any way you want. But I would read it mostly in that it's one larger lesson. So not say the lesson of I'm going to learn how to rollerblade. It would probably be something more on a symbolic, metaphorical level, something a bit deeper as far as your life path goes, and that's something that's going to evolve you and help you to grow and further yourself. So think of it more along those lines if you can, if you choose to. But if you choose to think that it's going to say that you're going to learn to rollerblade and that's the lesson you need, by all means, far be it from me to tell you that that's wrong or you shouldn't do that. So next we have how or through what means these lessons are to be learned. So, whereas this was the lesson or lessons themselves, now we're having the action. So, what sort of things are you either going to have to do, or are you embodying the roles, the physical things going on that are going to teach you? And so this is more manifested, where this is quite conceptual. So you can see we're working our way down into the descent, the downward arrow, the earth glyph. At the top, we start very conceptually. It's abstract, although we can understand what this might mean. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty practice, how it's going to practically play out in order for us to really integrate this and learn it and make it a part of our process. And so here we have cups. We have quite a few cups. So it seems like when I spoke on this, feeling more so like a progression of self, feeling confident and in one's own abilities and less insecure, and tearing down that self-doubt and hate talk or any of those sorts of things. Now we get a lot of these cups, and so it's feeling a lot more like self-kindness, self-compassion, showing love to others and especially to ourselves, and not being so external with that, and really needing to take the time to feel those emotions for ourselves and to give ourselves what it is that we're giving others. So maybe somebody who gives more than receives or feels almost unworthy of love, and so they kind of withhold it from themselves. So acts of kindness and self-compassion here, things to show that you appreciate yourself, the actions translating into actual feelings. So when you do something that is loving towards yourself, eventually, hopefully, it's going to sort of rewire that programming, and you're going to actually believe it, as opposed to maybe the disbelief or the unworthiness or feelings of not deserving that. And then hopefully, so the actions turn into the feelings for the self, and then in turn you feel very deserving of it from others, and so you will seek out relationships that aren't maybe so one-sided, that are actually giving you something and you aren't just the giver, things like that. And so that's, we want to engage in those actions, things like treating yourself and self-care and all of that, maybe journaling on gratitude and things about yourself that you love, things like that. And so now we're down to that bottom card, and so this would be the most manifest, the heaviest point before we get recycled into a new lesson. So we basically at this point, for the most part, learned the lesson, maybe with a few tweaks, and this card's really going to finish it up for us and then let us know that it's the book is closed, this chapter's done, and that we're going to restart with a new set of lessons. So we have the culmination, outcome, result of the lesson, indicator of an ending, which will mean new lessons. So the key here is that when we feel like this point has been reached, what this card embodies, that we have hopefully learned this lesson for the most part, and that we are then ready to head back up to the top and start a new lesson, look at a new set of abstract cards and meanings to let us know what it is that we can begin learning now, because we're constantly learning and growing. There's always new lessons, and once we finish one, inherently in just how life proceeds, we're going to find ourselves in the midst of learning a new lesson. And so here we have the Princess of Wands. And so I think that she embodies a more adventurous spirit. She's somebody who can bring herself out in the world and show others what she's made of. There really is no hint of, I guess, self-hatred or things like that. She is kind herself. That's not really even on her docket of things that she contemplates, I would imagine, so much. She's really about experience and doing and living for herself and in the moment. And so when you find that you're really living a life where these concerns and aspects of, say, loving yourself or feeling unworthy, when they aren't even crossing your mind so much anymore because you feel like you've maybe wholly tackled that aspect, or you really worked on it to a point where it's not the constant nagging in your head, and you really feel like you've got a strong grip on it and you're living a life that really reflects that you've got a little bit more of a handle on it, then maybe that's when we know it's time to say, you know, like, we finished this lesson, it's time to head back up and see what lessons are kind of really calling out to be learned for us right now. And so there really is that descent into matter and then a recycling back up. And so I think that this is great for looking at, say, lessons we might not have otherwise noticed so consciously. Sometimes we're in the midst of learning lessons and really key points and factors are calling out to us, and we're having these struggles, and looking at something like this, I think, can put titles and names and concrete definitiveness to, say, the feelings that we're having, the actions that are going on. And so I really love it for that, and I think it's a nice way to check in with oneself. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you try it at home, be sure to let me know. I'd be very curious. Like I said, you can definitely feel free to just screenshot this and do it that way. I don't have a Word document of this one like I have with some of my other reading tutorials, but if you have trouble screenshotting this or something and you need me to send you a picture of basically what it is, I can do that, of course. Just let me know. So like and subscribe if this was fun and interesting and you like this kind of content, and until next time, bye everyone.